After paying my Abusive ex to crash my baby shower and claim the kid was his, jealous sister pleaded for forgiveness. Parents no longer want to see her. I'm 28F, and I'm here since my baby shower didn't go as planned. For reference, my older sister Rebecca, 32F, has always been the golden kid. Growing up, she was good at everything, academically or otherwise. She was the kid who did everything well. Everyone was compared to her, including me. My parents always set the bar high for me, which was stressful. Because I don't think I could do what she did, I'll be honest. I was decent in school, but I was awful at science, so my parents felt I was dumb. They never told me, but I could tell they were upset I wasn't like my sister. Anyway, I was bad at school. I chose business school because that's my objective, and I didn't want to study medicine like my sister. We never got along because Rebecca had a large head and sibling gravity was too high. She was haughty and egoistic, so I felt like even if I was good, she would hate it. I was, and still am, a terrific dancer, but she didn't enjoy it because she wasn't good at it, and whenever I performed well, she would make a face and try to make it about herself. In addition to every other day being about her. Our parents attempted to treat us equally, but I felt deep down that they were more proud of my sister. After high school and moving out, we became civil to one another despite our many troubles. We've mostly tried to be friendly. Holidays and stuff bring us together. I know she doesn't like me, and I don't like her either, but it doesn't matter anymore. It must still bother her because she can't take not being the focus of attention. Her overachieverness persists, but I think I've exceeded her in relationships. I didn't think we were competing in interpersonal connections. Quite personal. Don't consider that an achievement. Despite being younger than her, she doesn't like that I'm married and having my first child. Rick, 30M, and I have been together almost 3 years. After 1 year of marriage, we discovered we were expecting 2 or 3 months later. Naturally, we were happy and revealed it a few weeks later. My parents were thrilled and we now get along. After I graduated from college, I told them my childhood was difficult, no matter how hard they tried to hide it. They always used my sister as a model for me, which put me under a lot of pressure. I contacted them after college and they apologized. They apologized for mistreating me and said they didn't realize they were comparing me unfairly. They told me they loved us equally and would strive to reconcile and be better parents. After that chat, I didn't sure what to think, but they've tried to help me since then, and we've had a wonderful connection, so I've put my childhood past behind me and don't have any bad blood. They even tried to reconcile Rebecca and me. However, Rebecca made it apparent that she did not desire a good relationship with me, so I urged him to give up, because we were too old and Rebecca was not someone I wanted to be friends with. She has always been egotistical. And just likes talking about herself and her accomplishments. I'm delighted she's doing well, but hearing about it all the time is exhausting. Especially since I know I can be delighted for her achievements, despite our situation. She has shown she can never be happy for me. She did selfies at my engagement and wedding. She was upset when I announced my pregnancy, and at my baby shower she crossed every line and tried to sabotage it in a way that I don't think anyone in their right mind could forgive her. She's lucky I didn't press charges against her and my ex, who she had brought as an uninvited and unwanted +1. Kurt, my ex, and I don't get along. His toxic and abusive behavior was the worst I've ever experienced, thus I hated and never forgave him. Everyone in my family knows how awful our relationship was and how hard it was to move out of that time. I met him in my freshman year of college and dated him on and off for 4 years. We broke up after I discovered he was cheating, but he kept attempting to talk to me. At one point, he started talking to me and stopped when I threatened to report him to the police. Despite saying he loved me and wanted me back, he kept criticizing me to my friends. His actions caused us to break up throughout our dating. Whenever he saw me talking to someone else or going out without him, he suspected me of cheating or not being as invested in the relationship as he was. But I was easily manipulated because I wanted love, and when he apologized, I was simple to control. He applied it thickly so I would buy it. So when things were wonderful, you made sure they were so great I would never forget them, and he would bring it up whenever we battled. Unfortunately, things were so horrible that I cried for days and was sad for 4 years. I kept coming back to him, which lowered my self-esteem and self-worth. I felt like I would never be able to move on, since I presented him to my family after 1 year of dating, but we continued breaking up. They knew. I told my parents. I even told my close cousins. Rebecca and my other family knew something about it, but I'm not sure how much, even though they didn't realize how toxic our relationship was, and how cruel he was to me. Everyone knew our split was horrible, and Rebecca went out of her way to bring him to the party. I'm happy I knew about it straight away because a couple of weeks ago, when I was informing my parents I was arranging a baby shower, I started hearing from friends that my sister had been asking around about my ex. She stupidly asked my close friends about Kurt's activities and attempted to claim it was out of curiosity, but I felt something was wrong. To be safe, I didn't invite her when it was time to send out the invitations and told my husband and parents why. This decision was unpopular with my parents, but they respected it. She still found out when and where I was having my baby shower. Maybe talking to other relatives who were invited since I hadn't told others not to talk to her about this, which was my error. Anyway, my baby shower a few days ago went well until Kurt arrived at my place an hour after it started. I was astonished to see him. And since this was a function at my house, there was no security, so he just went up to the door and nobody thought twice before opening it, even though we have an intercom. I opened the door and he came in since I forgot about him, with several papers, and gave them to Rick as he entered. I was confused and froze because I hadn't seen him since we split up and didn't know how to react. After giving Rick those papers, he was still recovering from the shock of everything that had happened, and Kurt announced that he had been having an affair with me for 6 months, and that the baby was his, because the date of conception matched all our dates. He was come to demand his fatherhood rights, and if the paternity test showed he was the father, he would gain partial custody. Despite saying he wanted to be part of the baby's life, he accused me of avoiding him for 2 weeks and not having an explanation. He said he didn't want to do it this way, but I forced him to. After that, he left our house, shocking us because none of his accusations were true. After then, it was chaos because I broke down from fear of what people would say. I knew it was false, but Rick and my parents did too. Luckily, nobody believed a word of what was said, and even the papers Kurt left with Rick fake printouts of claimed talks we had had were ignored. Everyone came to comfort me since I was crying so hard. After that, I don't remember much except that I was crying a lot and couldn't speak to anyone, so I had to go to my room to calm down and cry myself to sleep because when I woke up, it was almost midnight and nobody had eaten yet. Rick was the only one who told me that the guests had their meals since it was lunchtime, and nobody stayed long. After hearing what happened to Rick, I texted everyone to apologize. I was humiliated. Then I considered confronting the individual I knew was responsible. If I asked Rebecca directly if she was involved, I realized she might have been. She would refuse, and then make it seem like I had something against her. After talking to Rick, we decided to talk to Kurt directly and find out what was going on, because we were sure someone put him up to this. I knew Kurt was in love with me, but after I made it plain on social media that I was serious about Rick, he stopped talking to me and stopped talking to my friends about me. After years of disappearance, it was unnatural for him to return and lie to damage my reputation and marriage. I was confident Rebecca was involved, but I couldn't get it from her, so I talked to him. Unaware of the outcome, I unblocked him everywhere and tried my luck. I'm glad he was still a sucker and responded to my internet text. I questioned him why he would do this, and told him that I had always loved him but never expected him to attempt and pull out a prank that would harm my reputation, especially when pregnant. I told him I had always liked him and would never have done this to him if I were him. Because I knew him, I knew speaking to him this way would make him regret what he did. As expected, he immediately apologized for his actions. He hadn't considered Rebecca's request. I feigned to be astonished and didn't believe him because I knew my sister would never do this. He then emailed me proof of his chats with Rebecca, revealing that she had hired him to ruin my baby shower. Despite his reply indicating he had never meant to hurt me and was still in love with me, I blocked Kurt again after getting those screenshots. He was attempting to tell me that he was mad that I was married and having a baby with another man when he knew I was meant to be with him, which is why he agreed to do what Rebecca had asked. That didn't matter to me. I immediately gave my folks the screenshots and informed them what occurred. Despite the late hour, my parents called me when they received those texts. We couldn't believe she would pay someone to do anything so bizarre. However, when my parents phoned me, I informed them that after this, I didn't think I could be friends with Rebecca longer or even be civilized around her, and I made it apparent that they had to choose between her and me. They needed not consider it. They told me they would pick me immediately. Rebecca's actions were unfair and needed to be corrected. That explanation satisfied me, so we ended the conversation. I blocked her anyway, so I didn't need to worry. She was hysterical when she arrived at my door this morning after a few days of calm. I left her scream outside since I knew she would cause trouble and I was home alone. She started crying over my ultimatum to my parents, and reportedly tried to contact them but was prevented. She tried to contact them by showing up at her house, but they refused to let her in and stated they didn't want to see her face after what she did. She knew about my parents' choice and my ultimatum since they informed her. They told her to go, but she came to my house to urge me to fix it and apologize profusely. I told her this was no longer my responsibility and she had dug her own grave, so she had to lie in it. I also told her to leave. But she kept crying until I threatened to call the police. After a few hours, I feel awful about what happened. Maybe it's pregnancy hormones, but I feel guilty. AITA for having my parents pick between my sister and me. Update 1. I appreciate all the positive feedback. After 2 days, I feel differently about the scenario, so maybe it was the hormones. I was stressed out from her crying at my doorstep, so I took it all on myself. That was new to me, so I felt guilty like everyone else. However, my parents told me that she has not contacted them since they told her about the ultimatum and their option. While we were talking, they apologized again for everything that had happened in the past and said it was their fault that she was acting crazy because the bar had been set too high and she was not used to not being the center of attention. I was unaware that she had a terrible breakup around the time I revealed my pregnancy. Her partner of over 2 years rejected her because he wanted to work in another state and she wanted to attempt long distance, but he said it was too much work. She was heartbroken and revealed why she was so bitter that my relationships were going well. As I stated in my original piece, I had never competed in these. But I never saw the point in competing in our love life because it would be unhealthy and destructive, even more than our internal competition. After hearing all of this from my parents, I felt sorry for her. But then I remembered that she had paid my abusive ex-boyfriend to attend my baby shower and accuse me of cheating on my husband with him. That was psychotic. And I'm sorry, but no breakup can excuse that. I think it's acceptable for me to ask my parents not to speak to her again, if they wish to contact me. My parents also told me that even without my ultimatum, they would have stopped communicating to her due of her behavior. She was not crying. When she arrived at their doorstep and was told they did not want to speak to her, they told me. Before seeing me, she was enraged and screaming at them at the top of her lungs. Now she was distraught and crying. She could see that they were treating her like a loser since she was single and had no children, behaving like they were disappointed in her. I don't think my parents were acting like way, but they were proud of her as a doctor. They were not narrow-minded and didn't care whether she was married. It was wonderful that my parents were happy of me for many things, but she felt that meant she would no longer be in the spotlight. She was furious because she thought they didn't love her anymore, and she wasn't the golden kid because they were treating her properly. My parents handled her differently as a child, so everyone had unreasonable expectations. Anyway, she stated that she thought my being treated properly meant they were less pleased of her because I got knocked up. My parents begged her to go after she spoke those same words, and then she came to me. After my mom and I talked about this, we realized we did the right thing, and I no longer feel bad. Of course, hiring my ex-boyfriend to make a stand at my baby shower to harass me while I was pregnant because she was jealous was unacceptable. She wasn't sorry until she realized our parents wouldn't talk to her, and I don't think she was sorry anyhow. So she's been cut off from the family, and will urge relatives not to talk to her because I don't want any drama. Update 2. Rebecca showed up at my door last week to apologize, so I made that post. She stopped talking to us when we made it plain we didn't want anything to do with her. We had even spoken to a bunch of our relatives and had said that she was not going to be invited to any of our events, and we would prefer that she not be invited to any other family events in the future either, at least until I was fine with whatever had happened. And I had even explained my reasons and told everyone the truth about what she had done and why my ex-boyfriend had shown up at my baby shower that day. Everyone was pretty scandalized and agreed to not keep in touch with her, and that was that. So since then, nobody had heard from her, but today my husband called me up while he was at work. And that's pretty unusual since Rick is very devoted to his work and he's quite a busy man, so he doesn't really call when he's at work, and I know that he's usually caught up and so I don't call either. But today he called me in the middle of the day, and I was pretty concerned, so when I answered I knew that something had happened. He told me that Rebecca had apparently shown up at his workplace to speak to him and was refusing to leave, even though he had told the receptionist that he did not want to see her right now. However, she was just sitting in the lobby and refusing to go away, so now it was becoming very embarrassing for him. He told me to do something because he had an important meeting with a client coming up, and so I decided to unblock her and speak to her, just to get her out of there. I also happened to know the receptionist at his office, and I texted her saying that if she doesn't leave after the phone call with me, they should just call security and have her escorted out. She does not deserve special treatment just because she is related to me, and she should be treated just the same as anybody else in her position would have been. So I tried to speak to her on the phone and explained to her that what she was doing was very embarrassing for all of us as a family, and it reflected poorly on her as well. So she needed to get out of there because she was not entitled to disturb my husband at his workplace since he was not even involved in any of this. This was between me and her and the rest of our family, and he had nothing to do with any of that. But she refused, saying that she believed that my husband would be able to make me see sense. And then we had a bit of an argument, after which I realized that it was pointless to try and speak to her. She was just too stubborn. So I told the receptionist at my husband's office to have an escorted out, and eventually,